Hello, my name is Andrew. Today I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm here to read the Daily Reflections book for August 14th, 2026. It's called Repairing the Damage. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. That's found on page 76 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where they're talking about steps 8 and 9. Making a list of people I had harmed was not a particularly difficult thing to do. They had shown up in my fourth step inventory. People towards whom I had resentments, real or imagined, and whom I had hurt by acts of retaliation. For my recovery to be thorough, I believed it was not important for those who had legitimately harmed me to make amends to me. What is important in my relationship with God is that I stand before Him knowing I have done what I can to repair the damage I have done. Period. The end of the reading. Having a tough time reading the text today. I couldn't find my eye drops this morning. Maybe that's it. Oh, and I'm getting older and my vision is failing. Let's see. Just repairing the damage. Where are we at on here? Step 8 says, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And as I had said before, I came up with a pet theory of how this book could be used. And since each month has 4 weeks, each 7-day period with maybe a longer period at the end, because 4 times 7 is 28. That leaves us 2 to 3 extra days that are not accounted for really in what I'm about to say. The first 7 days deal with orientation of the step, like why or what is the purpose, what might you find in this step. We're in the 8th month. The 8th step is, that's how I'm doing that. And then the second 7 days, which we're in now, is the methodology or the actual actions that we could take if we wanted to go to any length for victory over alcohol. Okay, so, and then the third week is execution of what we learned in the second part, which we might learn some more about this today on the 14th day of the month. The execution of those actions, how we might actually put these ideas into action and then actually perform them or do them. And then the last week of the month, at least in the reading, so maybe theoretically, would be the transformation that occurs after putting these steps or these certain actions into order in your life, in the effort to go to any length to have victory over alcoholism. And a big, huge part of, at least in my recovery, that might be incorrect. The thing I feel the most in the area of pain and regret, I think, with alcoholism, or what I used to feel, is this thing. What is important is my relationship with God, is that I stand before Him knowing I have done what I can to repair the damage I have done, because it was literally eating me alive with guilt when I could not, reconcile or balance the books in my head of what one concrete example is I couldn't sleep. Why couldn't I sleep? Many reasons, but there was usually a constant reason that would show up night after night, that I would have thoughts that I couldn't get rid of, and the thoughts would be centered around what I had caused other people to go through, the harm I had caused. And remember, it said here, real or imagined, I think. So I'll read this whole bit of text again. Making a list of people I had harmed was not, and I'm going to paraphrase where I see fit, making this list of people wasn't that difficult. I had the people to choose from my step 4 inventory, which is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of our lives. Let me read that. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, not somebody else. Okay, and so made a list of these people. I'll just read it. Made a list of people I had harmed. Making a list of people I had harmed was not a particularly difficult thing to do. They had showed up in my 4th step inventory, people towards whom I had resentments, real or imagined, and whom I had hurt by acts of retaliation. And I've mentioned this, I'm certain, on becoming willing, which I think that'll be explained a bit more next week. But as an intro to that, these two phrases here, people towards whom I had resentments, real or imagined, and whom I had hurt by acts of retaliation. For the longest time, and maybe still in some isolated instances, I couldn't see that the part I had to play in all of everything here, at least regarding the 8th step. So my acts of retaliation, or the harm I had caused others, these kind of incidents that would replay in my mind when I'm trying to not think about them, or even when I am thinking about them, or when I'm trying to do something else critical, like relax and have a clear conscience, enough to close my eyes and go to sleep and get some peaceful rest. That couldn't happen anymore, because I would slip into replaying these incidents in my head in a myriad of ways that, correct or not, they were painful to me. And what I was reviewing was like the undue pain I'd caused these other people. Undue because, nobody really deserves that kind of thing, and especially not from just another fellow human being. That's how I feel these days. Didn't always feel this way. But so say I made mention of this make-believe example of just several days ago. I forget when. I'm having a rough time today. I'm not saying that for you to feel sad for me or anything. Just trying to explain why I can't say what I want to say here. And okay, here, I'll try again with this example. What did I call myself today? Alex or Andrew? It doesn't matter. Test subject A here, reporting for the experiment. Uh, I had run through somebody's fence. I had caused physical damage to someone's fence and their property with my automobile, with my car, and I was drunk. And I was angry with them for whatever reason. So I retaliated. I felt they had harmed me first. That's kind of an important thing. I felt like somebody had harmed me first, so I retaliated. An eye for an eye, which is not a good way to go through life. And I ran my car right through their fence, tore off into the distance, and never to speak to them again. Especially not to discuss how I could purchase a new fence for them. Certainly not to explain, now I'm having regrets and I'm sorry and I wish I hadn't said those things. What can I do, like in the physical world, to actually repair the damage I caused? Whether it be maybe a sit down face to face, just so you can. I don't want. I'm going to get all off into the ether, and I don't want to do that today. Or whether it's, would you like me to send you a check, for damages caused, that maybe just purely a cash settlement would fix these things? Anything I could do will make me feel better, and that's what I'm trying to do, because I've become sober, and I've got this program in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. This is the type of thing I might say to somebody, like even you. And it doesn't outright require of me, but for the best chance of my continued sobriety and change of heart would be to make amends to people I had harmed. But it has to kind of start with become willing to make amends. And then I'll even back that up a step further. If you may have to become willing to make an amend to somebody you had harmed. This is what I was saying about myself, I think, is that I couldn't, for the longest time, I couldn't see why I would need to make an amend to somebody, because they hurt me first and I hurt them back, and eye for an eye, all scores are settled here now. Maybe at some really shallow level, yes, maybe. But as the years rolled on and I continued drinking, and then even after I quit drinking, I kept replaying that incident in my head, and the guilt of causing, probably just purely from causing harm to another human being, was really beginning to weigh on me. And that's kind of, we've got most normally operating human beings, without like grave mental psychological damages, I think are going to feel some kind of remorse or pain themselves for causing pain in another human being. This guilt. When you see another human injured, a lot of times we would like to be able to help that person and fix their pain. I don't want to get too far into all that either. What is my point today? Because it's like the last day of the methodology of this thing. Repairing the damage. Let me read this whole thing again, and maybe we can get some new ideas. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. Maybe this is like this eye for an eye kind of thing. They hurt me first, I'm hurting them back, and then we'll be even. Even Stevens. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Oh, they're talking about we attempt to, well, whatever. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Every single second of every single day, if it takes that much, maybe. Why can't I get it into my head that regardless whether or not they hurt me first, I hurt them, I feel bad, as I just mentioned, they're in pain, I caused it, I want to fix that so I can feel better. Now they might have a restraining order against me that may not be possible in the way I first see it happening. They could be dead. That's another thing that we can address. And it is addressed like in pages 76, 77, whatever, beginning at page 76 in the big book. How do we make amends to dead people? What it says about that is we can't be responsible for delivering something that can never be received, I guess. So once somebody's dead, we can't make them know how we feel about anything, especially about how we might have caused their death. That's a sticky one. Or how we feel about harming them while they were with us living. And what we can do is write a letter to them as if they were right with us, read it out loud if we're able to, and then burn that thing or in some other way destroy it absolutely, because you don't want to be arrested for things. Maybe if that kind of thing comes up on your, it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know, burned your house down, or any other kind of grievous, horrible misstep that's illegal, dangerous, harmful, and all that kind of thing. So get rid of that evidence in one way, and in another way, symbolize that you're letting go of this with the hopes that you'll be forgiven and you can get some sleep again, if that's your issue. I know I forgot what I was talking about. We keep asking for the willingness to forgive these people probably first, because whether or not they forgive us or we forgive them or whatever, it's like, number one, I feel bad. I can't sleep. I'm still very selfish. Why is that? Well, maybe it's because I harmed this other person. Step 8 is asking me to do this kind of thing. Okay, we got this. Alice is now on my list, or I'm Bob, and now Ted is on my list, or whoever you want to use for a name. But they're dead, and then I just kind of ran over that here quickly. That you should maybe write a written apology as if they were sitting right with you. Apologize. Shred that letter into tiny, tiny, tiny microscopic pieces and get rid of it, or burn it and turn it into ash that you can't read any longer, because sometimes when you burn stuff you can still read it. But burn that thing, mash it up into just powder, and get rid of it. Maybe like when we do the same thing with human bodies, slow down. And set yourself free of carrying that resentment maybe towards this person, or resentment at yourself for causing harm to another human, even though you think they caused you greater harm. That's usually a popular thing. This excuse for what they did to me, maybe I should have burned down their house instead of just calling them a bunch of bad names and then giving them the cold shoulder for 35 years or whatever time period. Oh, geez. Where are we at for time? 19 minutes. Okay. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol, such as humbling ourselves, apologizing to these people we had harmed, even though we don't feel that they deserve it. So making a list of people I had harmed was not a particularly difficult thing to do, because if you're just writing down names, you could maybe just make up those names and say, what if I had harmed Bob, Bill, Ted, Alice, Alex, Charlie, and Fred. That doesn't take a whole lot of effort just to write down some names. and I made mention of this in days gone by that you are able to access. Just writing the names down isn't that difficult or time consuming, or taxing on the physical body. But what happens, I think, is we start to think, oh, Bob, I harmed him. I remember driving my car through his fence. And then we start to play that tape again. And then we start to embellish the truth, probably, so we don't look so bad. Our ego does all this automatically. And pretty soon we're like, you know what? I don't need to tell Bob anything. And might have renewed hatred towards Bob because of our memory being faulty and embellishing and making us look better. Our ego will do that for us. It's a survival tactic. But I guess that kind of goes haywire for us alcoholics, or for people that are having a difficult time sleeping or whatever. It's like, I can't forget about the damage I caused. I tried alcohol. Let's stick with this kind of thing. And man, I think I really gave it my best effort. I drank myself into oblivion every day for 22 years. And then I got sober, and still 8 years later or so, I cannot get the thought out of my head that I caused some harm. What can I do? What can I do? We can try and do steps 8 and 9, beginning with step 8, beginning with becoming willing to make amends to these people we had harmed. Okay, now I'm trying to break this down to the simplest, easiest thing. Making this list of some people, even 50 people, let's say, I think that's realistic. It's likely to be a lot less, but not necessarily. Writing down 50 words in the shape of, Bob, Ted, Alice, Gary, Paul, Fred, Barney, Wilma, Betty, doesn't take that much effort. What happens, though, is we start to judge whether or not they should be on the list at all, or whether or not they should be on the list. And a good way to get around that or get through that, because I don't like the word get around, like trying to work around, and that's a natural tendency too, is to cheat and make it easier on ourselves, conserve energy, is to just put their name on the list anyways. Because the larger point I'm trying to make here is maybe it's the becoming willing part is the ideal outcome of step 8, not necessarily making these amends to people. Maybe it's just humbling enough to realize that you might have caused some kind of harm to these people, and you're willing to try and correct that in some minor fashion, in a half effort or something. So it's like, okay, maybe if you twist my arm hard enough, I might want to forgive Bob, or I might want to apologize to Bob. I might want to try and mend physically that fence myself, or hire some guy that could do it for me, and then cover all the expenses from my own pocket, because Bob didn't deserve that. The person I harmed, I went overboard. I was drunk. I wasn't drunk, whatever. I really harmed Bob, and I really feel poorly about it. What can I do? Maybe I could become willing to make an amend to this person. And then once we have that in hand, or have that mindset, write down Bob's name on you could even title it, People I Had Harmed. Bob. Write that down. And then it will be a record, hopefully only for your eyes only, not to be shared with anybody at this point, or maybe ever. And then you can't escape it. Bob is on the list. And then whether or not he should be, or legally or accurately, and all this kind of legalese and mind games we play with ourselves, he's on the list. And maybe that goes, oh, well, you know, Bob had a family. He had a significant other that was harmed also because I harmed him, and that harmed the wife or the husband or whatever, his children, or, you know, all this collateral damage. I really only meant to hurt Bob, but it ended up harming more people. What do I do about? Well, we're going to need to maybe put their names down. I'm not saying we have to make amends to those people also. You know, to keep it free flowing here and easy and slippery. So now all of a sudden, Bob has turned into two people. Bob and Alice say, what do we do? Where are we at? 25 minutes. Let's read this. Making a list of the people isn't that hard. They showed up on my 4-step inventory, making a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. Find out that I am a liar. I lied to Bob. I lied to Bob. Let's just stick with one thing. And then it hurt other people also that are close to Bob. Yeah, they had shown up on my 4-step inventory, people towards whom I had resentments, real or imagined, and whom I had hurt by acts of retaliation. Okay, so right there, retaliation. We perceive somebody harmed us, so we harm them back. Well, a lot of times we forget this critical difference is that I was drunk. I caused damage to them. Then they caused damage to me, and then I caused damage back to them. So that's like 3 points of me causing damage to their essentially 0 points or maybe 1. And it could be just purely imagined that by them giving me a cold shoulder because they're afraid of me just physically abusing them next time maybe, they just shut me out of their lives. And then I take that wrong, or I take it rightly, or however I take it. I just start to imagine all kinds of haywire stuff that isn't making sense. So I shut them out of my life or whatever. And maybe none of this is true, and it could easily be corrected. Or maybe it's a bit more difficult than easily, and it's extraordinarily difficult. We really need some help with this or whatever. So anyhow, you got a list of people you had harmed. And this is all we're doing in step 8. Make a list, and then maybe change your mind about how you feel towards the harm you caused, or whether or not they belong to be on the list. Maybe you can come around to the point, okay, they deserve to be on the list, because after all, I was drunk. Nobody asked for me to be drunk. I was drunk, and I wrecked a bunch of stuff in this person's life, and now I feel sorry for it, and I want to do whatever I'm capable of doing, whatever they will allow me to do to try and repair the damage that I caused because I was drunk. Out of my mind, or drunk a little bit, or whatever. Maybe I wasn't drunk, maybe I was hungover, whatever. Maybe I wasn't even an alcoholic and I wasn't drunk at all or anything, and you got the same kind of thing going on. Man, I need to make amends to this person so I can get some sleep. I really don't care what happens with them. I just need to feel better. So I need to make an effort. I need to become willing to make effort. I need to change my mind about this thing a little bit. It's like, and I think what I said there might be very helpful. After all, I was drunk. Things weren't coming at me straight and square and true and clear. And I retaliated against them, or I caused them great harm or small harm, or I caused harm to them they didn't deserve, as if anybody could actually deserve harm from one of us other human beings. That's reserved for a higher power. Karma, maybe. For God. There's all kinds of different... I don't want to get all into that. 29 minutes. So, repairing the damage. You know, maybe the damage is up here for sure. I'm willing to make amends to Bob. Period. There, done. Step 8 done. Now, step 9, we can move into that, but not yet. Let's just keep working on step 8 until we can figure out this. How do we become willing? You know, because you look at a guy like Bob, you would have harmed him too, or that kind of game. So thank you for coming by here. Leave you in an air of suspense, maybe. Build some tension. Maybe I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe I won't. But eventually I would hope to come back and explain how I worked the step 8 thing in my life. And how maybe I, how I worked it. Right or wrong. Taking too long or not taking enough time. Thank you for putting your time in here, and I wish you the best. If you lay off the booze, maybe just a little bit for a while. Try this, and see if things get better. Maybe you can entirely quit drinking booze, and you don't flip out with physical withdrawal symptoms. That's why people go to treatment after all, or why when an officer of the law, a public safety officer, a law enforcement officer, a Leo, picks you up when you're drunk, they lock you away and somewhat look at you to make sure you're not going to just die because you're too drunk or die because you aren't getting the booze that you so desperately need. Physical withdrawal symptoms. And they make, efforts to, I can't think of it. They make accommodations for you. They'll shoot you up with something, man, to keep you from not dying because you don't have a beer in your hand. And then they'll, all the charges, and you might end up in treatment or in prison, where they'll also take care of you in a different kind of way, which is not recommended to try that road. That rehabilitative effort by the state, I don't think anybody wants to get rehabilitated like that. What they do in the military is a lot more humane than, well, anyway, I'm not here to talk about that. So thank you for coming by here. I'll get back with you later, maybe. And I'll talk more about this, and you can listen or not. Maybe you can turn it into a drinking game, and every